When I discovered threat assessment, I felt like I had eaten a giant box of the best chocolates. It was like the most comfortable, yummiest feeling because threat assessment acknowledges that human behavior is really complicated. And there is no such thing as a single solution to anyone who has made a threat or poses a threat, because we understand that for complex problems, there has to be a complex multimodal solution. And it's brilliant.
What is going on, everybody? 'Tis I, the enigma of the gun airwaves, Miyanovich, welcoming you to Season 3 of the Liberal Gun Owners Lens podcast, where unprecedented perspectives are packed into the cargo hold for the LGO Lens spaceship Voyagio.
That's fucking Italian.
Don't believe that evolution is possible with guns and public safety in America? It's already happening, y'all. Minds are evolving. Think guns versus public safety is the only game in town, do ya? Think culture war is the big boss, do ya? Then keep your ass in the past. Everyone else, all aboard! Hello, everybody. Welcome to Season 4 of the 346. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Season 3 of the Liberal Gun Owners Lens podcast. 'Tis I, Miyanovich, and I have a fantastic guest to start off the 2024 season with. Today, I'm going to introduce you to new LGO buddy, Dr. Stephanie Leite, who I met at the Virginia Threat Assessment Conference in October of 2023, where I rolled over there with the great Eddie Davenport to get more to the heart of the whole threat assessment reality and to meet with basically the titans of the industry and become friends with them and pick their brains and find out what this whole threat assessment thing is about, because, as you all know, Liberal Gun Owners is not just about the usage of guns and the fun of guns and the hobby of guns and self-defense and rights and the Second Amendment. We are also about the negative things that happen with guns, because guns are not just the guns. Guns are the guns and the negative things that happen with guns. And that is the future, in my estimation, of gun ownership in America. Particularly if you like guns, if you like rights, if you like your hobby, if you like doing what you do, if you want that to be harder, if you want that to be less quality, if you want to have to hide it more from your wife and from your friends and the people that you work with, if you want to be in the closet more with your gun ownership, if you want to hide on the forums and talk about red dot, green dot, extended magazines and fluted extendos on your guns and all the things that you love, if you want that to be something that's better for you, easier for you, that I assure you, after 10 years of doing this, and staring at it, and 6 years professionally, 40 hours a week. If the gun reality does not start addressing the bigger picture of guns, which means the negatives associated with guns, then your experiences with your gun ownership and your rights is going to be worse. It's going to be harder. It's going to be less enjoyable. It's going to be much more complicated. So this is why, in addition to all of the standard things that everybody thinks of when they think of guns, all the usage and the buying and the training and the practicing and, ooh, look at me with my gun and I like it. Look at my extendo. Look at my fluted red dot. I've been shooting since I was 3 years old. My daddy loves me. Okay, we get it. All of that stuff. The other side of it is the negatives. And there are negatives with guns. Just how we talk about the diversity in guns and equality, and it's important for people that have been marginalized in regards to this right. It's important for them to engage this right and be fully enfranchised, and that's all important because the gun usage part and the rights part and the self-defense part and the hobby part and the enjoyment part, that applies to all people. Well, guess what also applies to all people? The negatives happen to all people. So we are going to master the negatives. And since every gun organization that has ever existed fucking sucks at dealing with the negatives, we are going to start with being excellent at the negatives. So we're on our way to having a level of understanding for gun-related negatives that exceeds essentially the president of the United States, that exceeds the leader of the most powerful country in the world. And now some of you are saying, well, Randy, that's not really that much of an accomplishment. It doesn't take very much. I would totally agree with you. But the reality is that politicians and policymakers and lawyers And activists, if you really take the time to do what I did and you really look at their understanding of the nexus between guns and public safety, they're fucking awful at it. And you would think that people that are creating policies and laws and bills and acts that are thousands of pages long and getting things passed, and you would think that they would understand and have a better understanding of this nexus between guns and public safety, and they don't. They don't. Some of them actually do, but the vast majority of them don't. And so LGO is already on the path. We're already basically there. That's what I've been developing. Brains, minds, subject matter experts, a network, a way for us to understand the negatives associated with guns. And then, of course, I will be doing the same thing with the positives associated with guns, because there's a lot of positives. There are a lot of important things connected to guns, and guns are important. So the goal is, and where the mission is, to far exceed the gun reality and the policy-making reality in knowledge. It's that simple. And we are already there in many ways. We are already there, and we're certainly on our way. This is why we have a network filled with people like Dr. Stephanie Leite, who I am very happy to introduce you to today. I did meet Stephanie at the Virginia Threat Assessment Conference in October of 2023, along with many other very cool and powerful subject matter experts, and I look forward to developing relationships with these very knowledgeable people. And frankly, they're world beaters. Dr. Stephanie is a world beater, and that's why she's on the podcast today. So let me tell you about Dr. Stephanie Leite. Dr. Stephanie Leite received her Doctor of Psychology from the University of Hartford, having previously achieved a master's from Boston University and a BA from Carleton College. She currently practices in the state of Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, and nationwide as a clinical and forensic psychologist in the arena of threat assessment and management. She provides training and testimony nationwide. Stephanie is an adjunct professor at the University of Hartford's doctoral program in psychology. She is a threat assessment trainer, consultant, and a professional speaker. Stephanie's practice concentrates on forensic psychology, which essentially means that she provides psychological evaluations and in-depth analysis when they are ordered by the courts in certain cases. So, in line with our general focus this year on the LGO Lens podcast, Stephanie is an expert in one area of where the law intersects human behavior. She also has a very unique expertise in this area because she has extensive experience in dealing with families and children. So please join me for this multiple-part interview with forensic psychologist and threat assessment professional, Dr. Stephanie Leite. So anyway, I would like to say to you, Dr. Stephanie Leite, welcome to the Liberal Gun Owners Lens podcast. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I will lay your bio and all of the setup in an introductory piece before the episode, so we don't have to really go crazy into your background. I do want to hear about it from you. But I thought about this today and what might be the best lead-in for us for a discussion. And first and foremost, people should know that I'm on this podcast with you because we met at the Virginia Threat Assessment Conference, and threat assessment is a particularly important idea for liberal gun owners because we're here to address both gun rights and gun-related negatives, and threat assessment is a very important practice, art, science relative to certain gun-related negatives, and that's why you're here. What really interests me, since I've been looking at this for so many years now, is to me, it boils down to human behavior. Gun-related negatives boil down to human behavior. And how do you stop human behavior, certain behaviors? How do you curb? How do you prevent? And the only thing that I found that starts to make sense to me are the sciences related to behavior and the sciences related to threat so far. So that's one of the main reasons why you're here, is to talk about that. You are a forensic psychologist, amongst other things. Could you maybe describe for us what forensic psychology is?
Forensic psychology is, first of all, the best discipline on the planet. I'm so happy to be able to be a forensic psychologist. My career has been awesome. Technically, my definition of forensic psychology is that forensic means related to the law. So it's psychology that is done in a way that answers or helps the law. So most psychology is done to help people get better, to not be depressed, to get along with other people. But forensic psychology answers legal questions, and it could be anything. And the field of forensic psychology is incredibly broad, including violence prevention, which I do. It could be helping people pick juries, There are a lot of psychological evaluations involved, which is great because I love doing psychological evaluations. This consultation, which is more what I do when I do threat assessment. So lots of different things, all very interesting, all focused on answering a legal question or a legal issue.
Do you do much more forensic psychology type gigs than you do like standard psychologist type gigs now? Is that like the main meat and potatoes for you, or do you keep yourself spread out amongst different tasks?
I do try to spread myself out, but I am not a clinical psychologist. I have had a small caseload in the past and carry a few clients to keep myself a little bit in the game, but 99% of what I do would fall under the forensic umbrella.
And you do consulting as well along those lines?
Yeah, so I do consultation, I do full psychological evaluations, I do a lot of training, and often threat assessment is sort of halfway in between, where it's consultation, it's investigation, it's helping people do a threat assessment and then writing it up.
So I want to move back here to this whole like contouring of behavior, stopping behaviors, preventing behaviors. Clearly, as a society, we're invested in changing behaviors. And we do that from our inside of our houses, in our communities, in our schools. We do it with law. We try to. We do it in politics, in our politics. I don't think people realize how much we're invested in affecting the behavior of others. Of course, affecting our own behavior is something we seem to not be as interested in, to me, as affecting other people's behaviors. But when we are looking at any negative, criminal behavior, or any negative, moral negative, perhaps, we could even say gun crime, whatever it is that we're looking at, clearly we're trying to change people's behaviors. And I just see the average person believes that changing behaviors is like a slam dunk. Like, it's like, oh, it's not all you got to do. I'm a semi-retired builder, renovator, remodeler, carpenter. And so you would find that a lot in the industry, which is, oh, shit, that's nothing. All you got to do is, that's all you got to, you just do the thing and the stuff, and that's all you do. Meanwhile, the task is quite complex and it's going to be way more expensive. But people have this heuristic where they just want to like fall back on, it's nothing. You just do the thing and the stuff, you do a thing and it's done. I find that with behavior as well. Like, I think that most humans believe that human behavior isn't complex and we don't need to do complex things. All we got to do is throw a law at it or just send them to therapy or the whatever. So can you give me your thoughts on the complexity of human behavior and how it's not quite a slam dunk just to have like these easy ideas to change it? Right.
All right. So obviously human behavior is incredibly complex. We are the most amazing machines on the planet. Humans are. So if let's narrow it down to threat assessment, since that's what I'm mostly here to do. When I discovered threat assessment, I felt like I had eaten a giant box of the best chocolates. It was like the most comfortable, yummiest feeling because threat assessment acknowledges that human behavior is really complicated, and there is no such thing as a single solution to anyone who has made a threat or poses a threat. And instead, threat assessment looks at the person in the context, right? So even if someone has made a threat, why have they made the threat? Why have they done it now? Where did they make the threat? Who did they make the threat to? And it keeps on going to the management. So when we're looking for a solution, which in threat assessment and management we call management, when we're looking for at the management plan, we don't just focus on the person and say, well, the solution is to get them into therapy. That's not threat assessment and management. That's a terrible way to do it. Instead, we look at the person, we look at their social sphere, we look at where they are. Are they in a school? Are they in a workplace? How do they integrate with the team? We look at the potential victims and who they are and how they interact with the person. We look at the way that the environment of the setting is. What is the corporate environment like? Are there free Sundays on Fridays? Is it the kind of thing where you come in and no one talks to you? What's the climate of the place? And we keep on going and we look at family, and it just grows and grows because we understand that for complex problems, there has to be a complex multimodal solution. And it's brilliant.
Yeah. that kind of thinking is also very much so against the sort of, I would say, the main flow or the main river of our modern society, which is things need to be done fast. We want single agent explanations for complex phenomenon. We want the easiest way to do it. And one of the reasons that I have liked being involved in learning about threat assessment is because it puts the brakes on all of that. Because we start from the perspective of why when there's at the nexus between public safety and guns, why is it always the most energy is being placed into these single agent explanations? All you have to do is do this to stop it. Or let's say perhaps a gun rights person a gun rights absolutist would say something like, well, laws don't work, or this thing doesn't work, or the public safety person might be like, well, that's because we need better mental health care in society, which we do, right? But it's simply not that simple as throw the idea out and that takes care of it. And this year, this is the third season of the podcast, there's two things that I want to focus on. And one is going to be the guns and the law, and two is human behavior. So I want to get some investment into this logic and understanding for this logic that we simply, if we're going to address any problem, we need to put the brakes on these hot takes, and we need to get down to the people that actually deal with this on the regular, like yourself, like John Van Driel, who I've had on. Otherwise, I don't know how we address, well, I guess all negatives, but certainly gun-related negatives. I guess I should say, I don't think we're mature enough as a society at this point. One of the reasons why we're not getting down to the bone with gun-related negatives is we're not mature enough. So I think the fastest way or the best way to do that would be for people to start getting hip to threat assessment and the behavioral approach. And that's why I've invested most of my time so far in the first 5 years of being an executive for this organization has been on student threat assessment, behavioral threat assessment. So you deal with young humans.
I do.
As well. Yeah. And so what interests me, and I think what interests a lot of people, is how do these things that manifest later in life as negatives, moral negatives, criminal behavior, where do they start? Are they nature? Are they nurture? Are they both? So can you give us kind of like a general sense of your work and your relationship with dealing with kids and their behaviors, and how do we contour their behaviors? How do we guide their behaviors, et cetera?
I'll take a quick step back and say that my background is unique in the threat assessment space because of the various things and the various hats that I've worn in my career, which have been several. So I started out working in the field of child protection. So that's abuse and neglect, and doing abuse and neglect evaluations for the court, right? That's a thing that forensic psychologists do. And through that, I got comfortable with working with pretty much the whole lifespan, from birth all the way up to like young grandparents, let's say. So I am comfortable working with people of many different ages, which is slightly unusual. So in the threat assessment sphere, a lot of people work in schools, as does John Van Driel and many other fabulous people. There are people who work in companies, etc. So when we look at really young people, it is very, very interesting now in this climate that we have, because the fear of the school shooter has gotten really intense. It makes for good media. When you were talking earlier, I was thinking, I'm so happy that you're talking about this and bringing a multifaceted, nuanced dialogue to it, because that's the solution, and that's not the way that things are usually reported on. So when people who work in the schools, they have a lot of fear, and they're really worried about a child turning into a school shooter, even though statistically the likelihood is extremely low. So I'm getting referrals more and more for really young kids, for kids who are out of control, who make threats. Most of those threats are never going to turn into anything violent, right? They're explanations and utterances of frustration. But there are some things that we can see in younger kids that could potentially be indicators that they're going to grow up and continue to use violence to solve their problems. And that's one of the things that I look at with young kids is how do they solve problems? It's the same with older kids. It's the same with grown-ups. How are they solving their problems? Are they using their fists? Are they using malevolent actions? If so, maybe that we can give them better coping skills. So I see threat assessment as being an awesome way of earmarking young kids who are having problems and then putting intervention strategies in place so that they can grow up and be their best possible selves, which is our job as grown-ups. But you also asked nature, nurture. It's everything is both, right? So there's some nature and there's some nurture. You can be born with more of an ADHD brain. You can be born with more of an autistic brain, and that will impact how you process information and how you make your decisions. But the nurture part is how you make the decisions, what kind of trauma you've been exposed to, what kind of behavioral role models you've been exposed to in your house. Is there violence in your community? How well are you eating? How well are you sleeping? All of those things impacts a child's potential for violence now and in the future.
One of the things that I have been involved with the establishment of a threat assessment team locally here. And because what I am is like a student threat assessment, behavioral threat assessment super advocate. I'm not a threat assessment professional. Like Liberal Gun Owners is involved in getting threat assessment established in a school district. That was one of the goals that I had. You know, when I first became executive director at the end of 2017, the first thing I wanted to look at was, I don't know if you remember, but like 2017, 2018 was like ape shit for school shootings, and it was hardcore. And so in that study, the early study for me, I wanted to dedicate some of our resources to understanding what this really is all about. Because if you remember before COVID, that 2020 election was going to be about guns. That's totally what it was going to be about. And when I first started the study of things, I sat down. I think it was early 2018. I sat down with a notebook, and I wrote down on the front of the notebook like 10 of the most prominent school shootings and their dates, so that I would be forced to look at them every time I opened that notebook. It was on the front cover of the notebook. So I started sitting down, I think it was in February of 18, doing that. And within the first couple of months, I was writing new dates down on that notebook. And so if it was apparent to me that if you're into guns or you're into gun rights or whatever it is, that this is something you need to know about, right? Because it can affect everything, not just gun rights. Obviously it affects public safety, but I was, I was like drinking from, when I got into the threat assessment thing, it was like drinking from the fire hose. There was so much. I was so happy to find it. And so I set a goal for us, which is like, let's help to get threat assessment in at least one school in the next 10 years. And so we're kind of doing that right now, which is really awesome. And I'm telling this long story to get to this short point, which is I am shocked at how many kids easily will use blowing up the school or shooting people at school as a basic throwaway threat. They're so comfortable with it. It's happening constantly. They don't mean it now. But this thing has become a meme. It's become a thing where you can get behavioral leverage out of people, get control out of people. And so I'm bringing this up because you brought up the difference between making the threat and actually being a threat. I think a lot of people would be shocked how many kids now are like, I'm blowing up the fucking school or something like that. You have experience with that, obviously?
Yes, it's so interesting that you bring up the 2017 time, because I noticed in my work a seismic change around that time also, in that it became a thing. And it became a thing in two ways. One is the people who want to get something, like you said, someone who hates math class and says, if you don't let me out of math class, I'm going to come in with a gun tomorrow and kill you, right? Their goal is not to hurt people. Their goal is to not be in math class. And they have learned that this is a good way of getting what they want. And they may not see the consequences of using those actions, depending on how their brain is put together. So that's type 1. And type 2 is the really terrifying type. Type 2 is, I know you like hats, so I feel that teenagers, part of the job of being a teenager is to try on different hats, to say, today I want to be a punk rocker. Maybe I'm an athlete. Maybe I'm a mod, right? To try different things on and to go for it full out, play guitar every single minute of the day until you have accomplished 3 chords. Around this time, school shooter became one of those hats. It became an option. So when you have kids who really aren't connected, who aren't dignified, who aren't successful, who feel like an outcast, not that every teenager doesn't feel those things, because that's also part of the job of being a teenager is to feel those things. That's when we have danger and they say, I think I'll try being a school shooter. And I hadn't seen that. And I've been doing the work for a while.
And one of the reasons why I wanted, I saw you speak at the Virginia Threat Assessment Conference and was like, I need to talk to this woman because you mentioned young kids. And I can't even imagine, like I think about my kids are 15 and 12. And I think about going to school in this day and age. And I can't even imagine having to think about school shooting. Like when we were in high school, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I just think I had, the typical struggles I would say for high school, but I fucking loved high school. High school was, a lot of it was amazing. It was really cool. I can't even imagine having to face this like this. And so it gives me resolve, right? And I want to understand how it is that a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old might even be exposed to this thing you just talked about, which is maybe if they're not a teenager, but maybe they understand school shootings and maybe that's even in their head, a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. I'm going to cry out for help or do something and I'm going to use school shooting as my threat. That seems, and this is the term I use with John all the time, which is this fucking ape shit. That just seems ape shit to me, but it is normal. Or somewhat normal because these kids are basting in it, right? And that, it breaks my heart is what I want to say.
Yeah, it's part of our society now. It's part of the societal dialogue. So they hear it. And last year we had a 6-year-old, right? We had a 6-year-old who walked into a school with a gun and shot his teacher. That is an outlier currently, but it lit a fire of fear underneath the feet of everyone who works with angry 6-year-olds.
Now, I wanted to make a point for people that are listening that because they're not going to perhaps understand the nuance of threat assessment at this point. But, threat assessment is not a mental health evaluation. It's not, you're not sending, threat assessment is a very basic thing for students. And you're getting through the process. Is this kid a threat or is this kid not a threat? If this kid is not a threat and the kid has other services that they need to be wrapped in or they have other needs, then the school should be, if they're decent, should be moving the kid from the assessment to other services if the kid needs it. But we're just trying to ascertain whether or not this kid is a threat. We're not essentially breaking the kid down fully, going through a psych eval. It's just basically getting is this a threat or not? If it's a threat, it goes this way. If it's not a threat, it goes this way. So there's multiple layers to this. And from my exposure, most of my exposure is with the John system, which is like gold standard system. So and I've been through a threat assessment. I went out there and sat through their threat assessments. It's beautiful what these people do.
Yeah. So the handy dandy way of thinking about threat assessment is that it can be really, really fast. A psych eval takes forever. Sometimes I do a psych eval in the context of a threat assessment situation as part of the management. But the actual threat assessment can happen really fast, and it has a couple stages. You take the case, then you go out and you gather information. This is the part that people forget about, is that you have to gather the information, and then you process it, and you watch John's team process the information. And there are many ways, different ways to do that, but you should have a technique, and then you come up with a management solution. And so many people go from step one, which is Johnny a threat, to quick, let's manage him, without gathering the information. And it's that information gathering that gives us not only the nuance, but the tethering to reality to find out, is it just because he hates math class? Is it because he hasn't slept because his family is homeless? What is going on? What is the context? And I'm sure when you saw John's team work a case, there was a lot of context.
Certainly. And they had their tier 2 system where there was like 15 people on the team from the community, everybody. That was sort of the point that I wanted to make was, threat assessment is a net where the vast majority of the time where you're going to get this kid caught in this very temporary net, it's about something else. And it's just another way to pick up on what's happening with these kids and get them what they need. Right. So it's not a, as John said, their system is not a gotcha system. It's not, not trying to get the kid in trouble, but you're catching the kid when these red flags are raising up. And what are those red flags about? Like you said, there's context. And then you can divert the kid over to other things that the kid needs to, when you've looked at the root problems of why he's red flagging in the first place. So just things like with the experience with John's team, they had like hookups at the YMCA. They're like paying for YMCA memberships and like programs and getting them into basketball and getting them a therapist and getting them a mentor, and all which is connected to doing the threat assessment. Right. And I just, the fact that everyone is not doing something like that in their school or is reticent, I understand money and all that stuff, but it's just mind blowing to me that it's not more prevalent than it is.
I have heard people say to me many times, well, if you can't lock them up, then there's nothing you can do. And there are oceans of possibilities between do nothing and lock up, many of which are free. And many schools and communities have a gazillion opportunities for kids and grown-ups that will help them feel connected and feel dignified, which is what you need to decrease threat.
And I understand the arguments of the teachers are already strapped. The district is already strapped. Teachers are already doing too much. So now they have to fucking do this. Like, now, I understand that. It's a real thing. And, I just know from dealing with John's system that they take that into account and they don't add much more burden to the teachers. And it really is something that improves the overall culture of the school anyway. And it's not turning the school into a prison. But my contention is this, for the people that say, well, teachers are overburdened and it's too much money. And look, we're going to have school shootings. We can either improve that or not. And the only way, in my opinion, to really improve it is threat assessment teams, like properly done with the proper system. So we don't really have a choice, is my opinion. If we want to see them dealt with better than we have been, we kind of have to do this, because I've been staring at it professionally 40 hours a week for 5-6 years now. And there is nothing else is coming. There's no Pegasus isn't going to fly over and some golden thing is going to drop out of the sky. Threat assessment is it. There's no reason to look somewhere else. We just need to get people hip to it. And that's sort of the problem. I
agree.
So everybody can stop looking. We found it. It's just, are we going to sit at home and go, well, there's nothing we can do, or the teachers are overburdened, or all that shit's already been addressed. So one thing popped into my head here that I wanted to ask you, and it's not really scientific. It's just my own hip shot estimate. And it's more nuanced than the way I'm going to say it. But if I'm looking at variables relative to issues with guns and kids, the first thing that comes into my head often is shit parenting. I know that sounds uncool, but particularly when it's related to loose guns in the house, right? There is so much shit parenting going on. Number one, I don't want, first and foremost, there are many humans that I don't want owning a cell phone automobile combination. There are humans I don't want having children, let alone having gun, right? But these kinds of people also, there's a lot of them, and they have children and they leave their guns loose. That's one with the loose guns. But just generally, if their kids are problematic, they're not very good at handling that. I look at the school shootings, and if I'm honest with myself, there are just too many examples of shit parenting. And shit parenting isn't a cause. It's not causality. But
of course it is. Sure. I mean, it's a poor parenting. You can draw a direct line from poor parenting to kids who have poor ability to manage their stress and come up with the stupid idea that they're going to manage their problems by hurting other people, right?
Sure. Yeah. I would just never say shit parenting equals school shootings. That's sort of what I'm trying to do. It's probably, there's a more scientific, but I want to talk to you about that, because shit parenting is an overwhelmingly large variable in my equation, and no one says anything about it. So what do you think about that?
Let's talk about it, because it is. And kids come out of the context of their home and their parenting. So there are many, many things, again, which we can look at as poor parenting, ranging from making those firearms easily accessible, right? One of the things that the FBI pointed out early in the field of threat assessment when Mary Ellen O'Toole was running the BAU and coming up with some of the basic rubric for threat assessment was that when kids rule the roost, her wording, and have unfettered access to the internet, that should be considered a risk factor. And you can look at that as poor parenting. So to make it more chewy, one of the things that happens with these kids is that they're not socially connected at school. They're not socially successful at school. And being socially successful is like the task of adolescence and childhood. So then they look online. And if they find the really negative communities online, like the Columbine communities or the true crime communities, which equals Columbine, or any of these communities that will support their interest in violence and push them towards aggressing to other people, that's when the true violence level goes up. That's when we go from someone who is making a threat but is really a sad, disengaged person to someone who actually is a risk. So for me, that online pronoid, which is Reed Molloy's word, communities are what create a ton of risk, and bad parenting, bad oversight is a part of it. Like, I'll give you a funny example. I was once talking to a mom whose child was making bombs successfully, and she was like, I don't have time for this. I'm a single mom. I'm working. I can't monitor his internet. And you're blowing this out of proportion. He downloaded some 18th century book off the internet, and everyone thinks it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. And I said, well, what was the book called? She said, it was called The Anarchist Handbook. And I'm like, yes, a big deal, not 18th century. You really need to monitor your child's access to the internet. He's not playing around.
So this makes me think about the stuff that I talked to John about, or maybe have had conversations. I have had at least one conversation with Gene Dysinger about, which is, and this is what I try to get across to people. This shit is so prevalent. Like when we see a school shooting, really there's like maybe 5 other ones that have been stopped for the one that you saw. Like there's no data on that. There's no hard data on that. And because we're dealing with behavioral intervention, you can't really prove a negative. Like, how do you say we stopped it? But really, I'm not bound by, I'm like a gray literature guy. Like I'm not bound by the hard science, and I can say shit that you guys can't say, and I'll fucking say it. They're stopped all the time. They're stopped around the clock. And what you're seeing is the ones we didn't get. And that's scary. It's also heartening because that means there are systems and efforts out there that are stopping them, and we know how to do it. And what am I going to say again? Where the fuck do you think that's coming from? It's coming from threat assessment mostly. It's coming from threat assessment. So it is shocking how much is actually going on and how much is actually going on with these kids. And I can't even imagine being a kid in this context, whether it's what's happening with the internet just generally, with depression and dopamine and perseveration and all of this stuff. But now you're adding in those that might be more vulnerable to extreme thought, more perseveration, loops they can't get out of. People should be fucking jumping all over this, right? If they knew, they'd be jumping all over this. But when I boil it down, that's why I always like shit parenting. I can't even tell you how many times you see an interview with the school shooter's parents or whatever, and I'm just like, these parents are fucking shit. Like how is it? How are people not saying anything? Like, okay, cool. Do you want an assault weapons ban? Okay, I don't agree with you. Go for it. Go for your assault weapons ban. But in your fucking equation, how about you do variable A, assault weapons ban, variable B, how do we address shit parenting? Variable C, right? What's going on in school? Like, put shit parenting in there. Put other things in there. But my God, the shit parenting variable, I think it's very important. And how do you address that as a society? I have no idea. How do we do that?
We don't have a solution for that, clearly. We have child protection, which is extreme and it's big brotherish and sometimes makes things worse. But I know that when I talk to schools, this is something that comes up over and over again, is the issue of how do you work with parents who won't play? Because when we put together a management plan, it obviously includes things for the parents to do at home, like decrease internet access, like make sure he does his homework, like other things like that that will help the child succeed. And what do you do when the parent won't play? That is asked at every single training that I do for a K through 12 environment, because it's tough. And those are the scariest kids, when you know that home is terrible and that the parents don't seem to care. So when the parents will play, I can take a deep sigh of relief. I can say this kid is a complete mess. Parenting and home might be a complete mess, but the parents want help. They're going to access help. They're going to take our genuine offer of assistance and use it to help their kids. Then it's probably going to be okay.
I wrote something this morning. I was doing some research and writing on the intersection of law and human behavior, which is the paper I'm working on right now. And I wrote that society and governments simply cannot invest enough money or spend enough time to solve all of their citizens' ills. Like, you can't, it doesn't exist. And so when we get down to something like school shootings, that's what I want people to understand is, again, everybody wants to go home at the end of the day. Everybody just wants to not have the hassle. So people are like, well, you just got to pass the laws and the government and the thing and the stuff. But that's not how you can't get to school shootings that way. You can't get to, perhaps your policy, if it's actually mature, could actually get to some of these things at the root by doing some other things. But you simply have to address this as a people, right? You must. It has to be local. It has to be in the house, in the community, in the school, at the state level, at the federal level. You must be doing it at all levels, and you have to be doing it comprehensively. Obviously, we are not. So that was the first thing that this makes me think about. The other thing is I'm working with Eddie Davenport in this, or just assisting him in his efforts to get threat assessment established in this one district locally. And this is in a district that's known as a high risk district. High risk. I want to talk to you about the term high risk too. This is in a rural area, high risk rural, right? Not high risk urban. We want to talk about shit parenting. Like, we want to talk about like parents who will play ball. No, thank you. So many of them won't. But the other thing is the fucking district won't play ball either. The established threat assessment teams that these people already have don't play ball. Like, they don't want to stretch and learn. So not playing ball is like a very common thing from the parents to the schools. And this, John said something that was shocking to me, but it really helped me originally. He was like, look, man, people are just not going to play ball. And sometimes this is about, like, you're a hockey goalie and you're just kicking the puck out of your own net. Like, it's about, if you have a school where everybody is playing ball, you just kick that thing down the street. Like, we can't help the other schools, but we can help our school. Now that sounds very cutthroat, but that's actually the reality kind of that we're in, is that you can only take care of what you can take care of. And do you see a lot of that where you have to like centralize the focus and with the people that will listen, that will work with you, that are constructive, and then not really wasting energy on the people that are thick?
I might take a little umbrage with his metaphor, though I know that it's true sometimes. But I believe that as a society, we shouldn't be kicking the puck down the road. And that's why I work to train everybody in every situation and every place so that everyone knows about threat assessment. But I agree completely that there are often people who won't play ball. And for me, it's heartbreaking, especially when it comes to a child, when you say you do not have responsible adults in your life who are going to help you with this. And that's a risk factor. That's one of the Secret Service risk factors. Do they have a responsible person in their life? So we have to work around them. And we don't give up. And we say, fine, the parents aren't going to play. We're still going to help this child. We're going to find other adults in our school, in the community. We're going to find big brothers, big sisters. We're going to find mentors, volunteer opportunities, a job where they can learn a trade and begin to feel valued in the universe. We're going to work around them, and we're going to have to put the pressure and the weight of their health and wellness and future on the child themselves, which is not what we want to do. That's not what grown-ups are supposed to do, but sometimes we have to because the parents are that useless.
Yeah. And just to give some context, like when John and I were talking about that, and he said that, John's a huge advocate for En Loco Parentis and doing all that stuff. But we were talking about there's the reachable population, and then there's the unreachable population. Like, at some point you have to say, this is an unreachable, right? Because there are other kids that are reachable that might be difficult to reach, but you need to use the stuff there, and we don't have infinite resources and infinite time and all of that. That's why I wanted to get your perspective. I just kind of heard your perspective. Do you spend much time thinking about that border between these are the people that can be reached and these are the people that can't? Or do you think your bias is to just think everyone's reachable until I'm forced to understand that they're not reachable?
So because I'm forensic and I come from the legal world, and that's my entree into threat assessment, I totally see that line. And there are people who are unreachable, and there are people where the only solution is containment. And that has to be. Sometimes it's just containment until their brains kick in. With teenagers, we see that. And I have been able to follow some cases over time where someone was going to commit a school shooting, for sure. Their brain grew a little bit while they were locked up in an institution, and then they were able to function in the environment. But yeah, you have to be able to draw that line. You have to be able to say, I feel for this kid. They're coming from a tough situation. They are not safe.